My name is Henry Walters, and if you've ever been made to feel useless by the very people you sacrificed everything for, then you'll understand why I'm telling this story. I turned 72 last summer. That number doesn't scare me. Age is just a mark on paper. What scared me was realizing that my own children, the ones I carried on my shoulders through parades, the ones I taught to swim, the ones whose scraped knees I kissed, no longer saw me as their father. They saw me as an obstacle, something too fragile, too old, too inconvenient. My late wife Margaret used to call me stubborn in the most loving way. "Henry," she would say, "one day your stubbornness will save you." At the time, I thought she meant my refusal to quit my engineering job even when hours got long. But the night my children left me behind for their glamorous cruise, laughing at the idea of me being too weak to join them, I realized what Margaret had really meant. Stubbornness can keep a man standing when everyone else wants to push him down. The humiliation didn't come all at once. It builds slowly, like a tide creeping higher until you realize your feet are already wet. It began when my eldest, David, mentioned he was planning a family trip. We were sitting in my kitchen, a place where once years ago every corner would smell of Margaret's pies. David leaned back in his chair, arms folded, that confident smirk on his face that made him look more like a boss than a son. "Dad," he said, "we're booking a luxury cruise next month. 2 weeks, the Caribbean." My heart lifted at first. I'd always loved the ocean. Margaret and I used to dream of retiring near the sea, of waking up to gulls and salt air. "A cruise?" I asked, smiling. "That sounds wonderful. I'd love to go. Nothing like the ocean breeze, is there?" David's smirk tightened. He glanced at his younger brother, Mark, who sat across the table, and then at his sister, Linda, who was too busy scrolling on her phone to look at me. "Dad," he began again, softer now, as if he were trying to break bad news, "I don't think it's a good idea. Cruises are long. There's a lot of walking. You'd slow us down." I stared at him. "Slow you down? David, I may be 72, but I still walk every morning. I still climb the stairs just fine." Linda looked up from her phone then, her lips twisting in that half-smile she wore when she was about to say something cruel disguised as a joke. "Dad, it's not a nursing home cruise. It's luxury. Champagne, parties, island excursions. No offense, but it's not exactly your scene." She let out a short laugh and went back to tapping on her screen. Mark, ever the quiet one, cleared his throat as if to soften the blow. "It's just, maybe it's better if you sit this one out. You'll be more comfortable at home." His eyes flickered away, unable to meet mine. The room felt colder then, even though the summer sun streamed through the window. I tried to brush it off with a chuckle. "So that's it then? Too old to enjoy the ocean?" David leaned forward, placing a hand on mine, as if that made the words kinder. "Dad, it's for the best. We don't want you to feel overwhelmed." I nodded slowly, though inside something cracked. I had always been the one to plan the trips. Camping when money was tight, road trips when they were teenagers, even a theme park once when I worked double shifts to afford it. And now, when they had the means to travel in style, I wasn't even invited. A week later, Linda posted a picture of the tickets online. A sleek caption, "Family cruise, here we come." "Sorry, Dad, this one's too wild for you." My friends saw it. Neighbors saw it. I saw it. The comments rolled in. "Aw, poor Dad. He'll be fine at home. At least he won't get seasick." Each word felt like a pinprick. They weren't just leaving me behind. They were mocking me for it. When they left for the cruise, they barely waved goodbye. "We'll send you pictures, Dad," Linda chirped as she wheeled her designer suitcase into David's car. David honked the horn impatiently. Mark gave me a small nod, guilt flickering in his eyes, but not enough to stop him from sliding into the back seat. And then they were gone. I watched from the porch, my hands gripping the railing. Margaret's flowers, now tended by me, swayed in the warm breeze. I thought of her then, how she would have scolded the kids for treating me that way, how she would have demanded they include me. But Margaret was gone and I stood alone. The days that followed were worse than I imagined. Linda posted photos constantly. The three of them on the ship deck, sunglasses on, champagne flutes raised high. The three of them at dinner, plates piled with lobster tails and filet mignon. Selfies with captions like, "Living our best life." Dad wouldn't have lasted an hour on this ship. Another photo of them climbing down a ladder into crystal blue water. Good thing Dad didn't come. He'd have drowned. Each post was like a slap. Each laughing emoji a reminder that I wasn't family in their eyes anymore. I was dead weight. Friends called me to ask why I wasn't with them. Some thought I had chosen not to go. I didn't correct them. I didn't want to admit the truth. One night, after scrolling through yet another post of them smiling on a beach without me, I closed my laptop and sat in the dark living room. Margaret's picture sat on the mantel, her eyes kind and knowing. "They think I'm fragile," I whispered to her. "They think I'm finished. But maybe, Margaret, maybe I've still got some fight left in me." That was when the idea struck. A wild, impossible idea that made me laugh out loud in the silence of the room. What if I didn't just wait for them to come home and gloat? What if I showed them that the man they thought was too fragile to travel was stronger, wealthier, and smarter than they ever knew? I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I was on the phone with the cruise line. The woman on the phone spoke with the kind of smoothness that told me she was used to handling wealthy clients. "Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for calling Royal Horizon Cruises. How may I assist you?" I cleared my throat, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to know about your most exclusive packages. The ones not advertised on the website." There was a brief pause. Then her tone shifted, more careful, more intrigued. "May I ask your name, sir?" "Henry Walters," I said. "And I don't want ordinary cabins. I want something special." She told me about the Owners Club, a package designed for the elite. Private suites with panoramic views, personal staff at your beck and call, access to restricted areas of the ship, the ability to host private parties for guests of your choice. It was the kind of luxury my children believed I could never touch. The price nearly made me choke, but money was not the problem. They didn't know that while I had lived a modest life, I had invested carefully. I had bought shares in companies when my engineering firm offered them, held on to them for decades, and watched them grow. My bank account was fuller than my children ever suspected. "I'll take it," I said simply. "When does your current Caribbean cruise return to port?" She told me the date. My heart thudded. That was the very cruise my children were on. "Good," I said. "Book me for that date. I want to be there when it docks. I want the suite ready, the staff prepared, and I want the ability to throw a party on board that same evening." She hesitated, then said, "Of course, Mr. Walters, consider it done." When I hung up, I sat in silence for a long moment, a smile creeping across my face. Margaret's photo caught the morning sun from the window, her eyes sparkling as if she were in on the plan. "They'll never see it coming," I whispered. The week that followed tested my resolve. Linda's posts became crueler. One day she uploaded a video of them lounging by the ship's pool, glasses raised. Her voice was loud, mocking. "Cheers to Dad. Too fragile for the fun life? We'll party for you, old man." David was in the background, laughing, adding, "Hope you're enjoying your TV dinners, Dad." Mark didn't speak, but he smiled, nodding along, complicit in his silence. The video spread among their friends. Comments poured in. "Savage," one said. Another, "Leave Grandpa behind, LOL." My chest tightened with each word, but instead of breaking me, it hardened me. Every laugh they had at my expense would make their shock sweeter. I prepared in silence. I bought a white linen suit, sharp but simple, the kind of outfit Margaret once said made me look like an old movie star. I had the shoes polished until they shone. I went to the barber for the first time in months, letting him trim my silver hair neatly. When he handed me the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. For the first time in years, I looked less like a forgotten old man, and more like someone who commanded respect. The cruise line sent me confirmations and details. My suite would be on the highest deck, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked over the sea. A personal chef would prepare anything I wanted. A team of attendants would be at my service, but most importantly, the Owners Club allowed me to host a grand reception in the ballroom, fully catered, with invitations extended to as many passengers as I wished. I didn't hesitate. "I want it booked for the night the ship returns," I told the concierge, "and make it open to everyone on board." In the days leading up to their return, I rehearsed what I would say. I thought about whether I should humiliate them the way they humiliated me, or whether my silence and success would sting more than any words. Each time I scrolled through their mocking posts, I reminded myself, patience, Henry. The best revenge is worth waiting for. Their posts grew bolder. David posted a group photo at a formal dinner. He wore a tuxedo, his arm around Linda, both of them smiling smugly. The caption read, "The high life. Dad could never handle this." Another photo showed them disembarking at an island, the turquoise water glittering behind them. Linda wrote, "Island hopping without Dad slowing us down." Mark took a photo of the three of them raising champagne glasses again, captioned, "Family first." Well, mostly. That one hurt the most. Family first. Without me. But the sting quickly turned into steel. Each cruel word was fuel. Each mocking post was firewood for the blaze I would unleash when the time was right. The night before the ship returned, I stood in front of the mirror in my linen suit. I smoothed the jacket, polished my shoes one last time, and looked into my own eyes. For months, I had felt like a burden. For years, I had let myself fade into the background after Margaret's death. But not tonight. Tonight, I would stand tall again. Tonight, I would remind my children and everyone else that I was not too fragile to live, to travel, to celebrate. I was stronger than they could ever imagine. When the morning came, the port was buzzing with life. Families gathered, waiting for their loved ones to disembark. The cruise ship loomed in the distance, white and gleaming, the sun catching its edges like a jewel. My heart thudded as it drew closer, music faintly drifting from the decks. I stood on the pier, cane in hand, not because I needed it, but because it made the picture of me as a frail old man more convincing. And oh, how convincing it would make the reveal. I watched as the passengers began to descend the gangway, my children among them, laughing, bronzed from the sun, bags stuffed with souvenirs. Linda held her phone high, filming herself live. "Back on land, baby. Best trip ever. Dad would have hated it." Her laughter rang out, cutting through the crowd. David walked beside her, smug and self-satisfied, while Mark trailed behind, carrying extra bags like a servant. None of them saw me at first. None of them expected me there. But when they finally did, when Linda's camera swung just far enough to catch me standing at the edge of the pier, their laughter froze. Her voice faltered. "Wait, Dad?" I smiled. Not weakly, not nervously, but with the calm confidence of a man who held all the cards. "Welcome home," I said. "Did you enjoy your little trip?" The look on their faces was priceless, but what came next was even better. Linda's phone tilted in her hand, the live stream still running, capturing the shock on her face. "Dad," she repeated, her voice cracking into a nervous laugh. What are you doing here?" David's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his smug face. "You couldn't have flown all the way down here. You can't even handle long trips," he muttered, as if trying to convince himself it was impossible. Mark just stared, mouth half open, his hands frozen on the luggage handles. I leaned casually on my cane, the bright Caribbean sun catching the white linen of my suit. Around us, other passengers glanced curiously, sensing drama. "Oh, I had some free time," I said lightly. "Thought I'd come down and see what all the fuss was about. After all, I do love the ocean breeze." Linda shoved her phone down, ending her broadcast. "Dad, this isn't... you don't belong." She stopped herself, but the words hung there, ugly and raw. I tilted my head. "Don't belong?" Funny, because I seemed to have been expected. I nodded toward the dock where a uniformed man in a navy jacket with gold buttons was approaching. The ship's captain himself. He walked directly to me, extending his hand with a broad smile. "Mr. Walters," he said warmly, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "Welcome back. We've prepared your suite. The Owners' Club is at your disposal." Gasps rippled around us. My children's jaws dropped. Linda's face flushed crimson, her eyes darting from me to the captain, unable to process what she was hearing. David took a step forward. "Wait, what?" "The Owners' Club." The captain nodded, oblivious to the storm building between us. "Indeed. Mr. Walters has booked our most exclusive package. He'll be hosting a private reception tonight in the ballroom. Invitations are already being arranged." He turned to me, smiling again. "We're honored to have you, sir." I clasped his hand firmly. "Thank you, Captain." "I'm looking forward to it," David stammered, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Dad, you booked the Owners' Club? That's impossible. You can't afford... He stopped himself, realizing too late what he was admitting. That to him, I was only ever a wallet. Nothing more. Linda's voice broke in, sharp and shrill. This has to be some kind of mistake. Our father doesn't belong in the owners' club. He's too... She faltered again. The words too old, too fragile caught in her throat. The captain frowned at her tone, but I only smiled. Oh, I belong, Linda. More than you'll ever know. With that, I stepped past them, walking up the gangway onto the ship. Crew members greeted me, bowing slightly, their respect genuine. My children were left behind on the dock, sputtering, confused, their friends and fellow passengers whispering behind their backs. The humiliation that had once been mine was now theirs. My suite was everything they had mocked me for not deserving. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the endless sea. A king-sized bed was covered in crisp white linens. A chilled bottle of champagne sat waiting in a silver bucket. The staff addressed me as Mr. Walters with deference that my children had never given me. For the first time in years, I felt not invisible, not fragile, but powerful. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of orange and pink, I dressed again in my linen suit and walked into the ballroom. The reception was already underway. Guests mingled with glasses of champagne. Music drifted from a live band, and laughter filled the air. Waiters circled with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. A banner stretched across the far wall. Private celebration hosted by Mr. Henry Walters. As I stepped in, heads turned. People whispered, curious about the man who had booked the event. Some recognized me from the scene on the dock earlier. They approached, eager to meet me, shaking my hand, thanking me for inviting them. I smiled, chatted, made them feel welcome. Every laugh I shared, every toast I raised, every handshake I gave, it all sent a silent message to my children, who were nowhere in sight yet. I don't need you. I never did, but of course they came. They couldn't resist. Halfway through the evening, Linda stormed in, dragging David behind her, Mark trailing like a shadow. She looked around, eyes blazing before her gaze landed on me, surrounded by new companions. I was laughing with a couple from Chicago, clinking glasses with a family from Spain, listening to a young man play the violin near the stage. Dad, Linda hissed, stomping toward me. What is this? Why are you doing this? I turned to her, still smiling. Oh, Linda, this? Just a little party. After all, cruises are for fun, aren't they? David's face was red, veins standing out on his temples. You've humiliated us. Everyone on this ship is talking about you. Do you know what you've done? I sipped my champagne slowly, letting the pause sharpen the knife. Yes, I said softly. I've reminded you that I am not a relic to be hidden away. I am not a burden to be mocked. I am your father. And I am living better without your approval than I ever did with it. The room quieted. Guests leaned closer, sensing the drama. Linda's voice cracked, desperate now. We were just trying to have fun. You didn't have to do all this. You've made us look like fools. I set down my glass. No, Linda, you did that yourselves when you mocked me online, when you laughed about leaving me behind. I didn't make you look like fools. You simply showed the world who you really are. Mark finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Dad, we didn't mean... His words trailed off, swallowed by the weight of the truth hanging in the room. I straightened, addressing not just them, but everyone present. On the day they left, my children told me I was too fragile for travel. Too weak for adventure, too old for joy. They left me behind as if I was already gone. But tonight you all see the truth. I am not too fragile. I am not too weak. And I am certainly not too old to celebrate life. The room erupted in applause. Strangers clapped, cheered, some raising their glasses in salute. My children stood frozen, faces pale, drowning in humiliation as the very passengers they had wanted to impress now turned their admiration toward me. Linda fled the room first, her heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. David followed, muttering curses under his breath. Mark lingered for a moment, his eyes wet, his shoulders slumped before turning and walking away without a word. I lifted my glass once more, the band striking up a triumphant tune. To life, I declared, to the joys we seize, not the ones we're given, and to proving that age is not a cage. It's freedom if you choose it. The cheers grew louder, the music swelled, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't since Margaret passed. That night I danced. I laughed. I was embraced by strangers who treated me with more warmth and respect than my own children had in years. And as the ship sailed under the moonlit sky, I knew one thing for certain. Revenge had never tasted so sweet. The morning after the party, the sea was the color of polished steel, and the sky stretched clean and empty above it, as if the world had been washed overnight. I woke before sunrise, not from habit or stiffness, but because a kind of young excitement pulled me out of bed. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my suite and watched the ship's wake unwind like a white ribbon on the water. Somewhere down there, beneath the hum of engines and the hush of early morning, the ocean was keeping its own secrets. I smiled, because I had kept one too, and revealed it at exactly the right time. My phone buzzed on the bedside table. For a second, I expected my children's names to appear in angry, jagged messages, but it was a note from the concierge reminding me that a private breakfast had been arranged. "Your preferred coffee and pancakes," it read, "and the chef has added fresh mango because it's a fine day for sweetness." That made me laugh, soft and genuine. Felt like a gift from Margaret, who would have approved of mango with anything. I showered, buttoned a fresh linen shirt, and walked out to the balcony to eat. The coffee was strong, the pancakes fluffed up like air trapped in joy, and the mango tasted like summer had decided to stay. While I ate, the sun climbed and the world turned golden. I let the heat soak into my hands, into the small aches in my shoulders, and I felt present in a way I hadn't in a long time. No past regrets tugging me backward, no future worry pulling me forward. Just the simple fact that I was here, alive, choosing my own morning. I spent an hour strolling the top deck after that, nodding to crew members who greeted me with the same easy respect as the night before. Passengers I'd met at the party stopped me to say thank you. The young couple from the Midwest said they'd never been to a reception that felt so welcoming. An older woman with a cane like mine squeezed my hand and told me she hadn't danced in years. But she'd danced last night, and it felt like waking up inside her own body again. A father with a little boy on his shoulders said he hoped he'd age like me, still brave enough to surprise his kids. I told him bravery is mostly timing and a good tailor, and we both laughed. The ship docked again near midday, a schedule I hadn't bothered to memorize before. People were bustling, lining up, rolling luggage, taking last selfies with the horizon. I didn't plan to disembark yet. I like the hush that descends when 100 people dive into movement, and you choose stillness instead. I had started to turn back toward my suite when I heard my name. Dad. It wasn't shouted, not even forced. It floated up behind me, uncertain and real. Mark stood there, hands empty for once, eyes red, hair rumpled as if he hadn't slept. He wasn't armored in his siblings' confidence or covered in their sarcasm. He looked like a boy who had run too far without knowing where he was going. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. I nodded, and we found a quiet corner beneath a sliver of shade. He kept staring at the water as if it might say something on his behalf. "I was wrong," he said finally. "I was a coward. I let them talk about you like you were old furniture, and I laughed sometimes. And when I didn't laugh, I stayed silent, which is the same thing." He swallowed. "I didn't come last night because I didn't know how to stand in a room where you didn't need me." I let his words sit. "Guilt, I've learned, moves like the tide, pulls you out before it brings you back. I never needed you to protect me from the world," I said. "I needed you to stand beside me in it. There's a difference." He nodded, shoulders sagging. But there was a firmness in him, too, a sense that he had finally climbed onto the right deck. "I can't fix yesterday," he said, "but I can be here today. If you'll have me." "Being here," I said, "starts with listening." He did. He asked questions I never expected to hear from him. About Margaret and how she chose the color of our first sofa. About my first job out of college. About the trip we couldn't afford when he was 10, and how I had promised we'd make up for it someday. Which we did with a cheap cabin and a lot of marshmallows that melted on our fingers. He remembered that. Mark remembered, and when he laughed, it wasn't embarrassed or apologetic. It was the laugh of a man shaking off a costume he never liked wearing in the first place. We walked the deck until the heat turned lazy and the breeze did the talking. Before he left, he said, "I'm going to speak to David and Linda. Not to defend you. You don't need that. but to tell them I won't be their silence anymore. I told him I hoped his voice would be loud enough to hear, but gentle enough to land. He smiled like he understood. In the afternoon, I sat with a book I never opened. The words on the page seemed far away. The real story was the one I had lived and was still living. A steward brought me iced tea with lemon, and I sipped it while watching gulls draw white commas in the blue sentence of the sky. When my phone finally vibrated again, it was a text from David. The first line was all edges. "Congratulations on your little spectacle." Beneath that, sentences that tried to wound but mostly bled. He accused me of ruining their vacation, of humiliating them on purpose, of stealing attention like a jealous child. "You did this to make us look bad," he wrote. "You'll regret it when you need us." I breathed once slow. "There are storms that deserve your shudders, and storms that only deserve your smile." I typed, "I didn't make you look bad. You did that the day you decided mockery was love. I don't need you. I wanted you. Those are different. When you understand the difference, we can talk." I hit send and felt no tremor of doubt. He didn't reply. Linda didn't text. She posted. Of course she did. A carefully framed photo of the ship with a caption that danced around rage. "Some people can't stand to let others have fun without making it about themselves." The comments were a seesaw. A few friends who echoed her. Some strangers who had been at the party and said the quiet part out loud. And one woman who simply wrote, "Respect your elders before life makes you apologize to empty chairs." I didn't comment. Not because I was afraid, but because not every fire needs more oxygen. Evening came soft as a secret. I dined alone on the balcony, the sky melting into pinks and golds that made the water look like it had set itself on fire to stay warm. The captain sent a small dessert with a note. 2 second chances at first-class sunsets. I ate half and left the rest because contentment, I've learned, is knowing when enough is delicious. Before bed, I took out the photograph I keep in my wallet, the one of Margaret on a ferry when we were young, her hair blown into a halo by the wind, her mouth open in a laugh that pulled me into the future. "You were right," I told her, as if she needed the confirmation. Stubbornness saved me. The days that followed were not dramatic. They were better than that. They were ordinary in the way you hope ordinary can be when you finally earn it. I woke early and walked the deck. I learned the names of 2 violinists who played in the atrium and tipped them for a waltz that reminded my feet they still knew how to move. I shared breakfast with a widower from Toronto, who told me love doesn't end. It changes its address. I took a short tender to shore and sat on a bench to watch children build castles that the tide kept editing. I didn't feel alone, even when I was. There is a companionship in choosing your own company and finding you like it. On the last morning aboard, Mark joined me again. He had slept. I could see it in his posture, in the way his voice didn't scrape its way out of his throat. He told me he had spoken to David and Linda. It didn't go well. David called him disloyal. Linda cried until the point of accusation, and then accused him of choosing me to spite her. I told them I was choosing what's right, he said simply, and that what's right isn't always comfortable. I put a hand on his shoulder. That sentence will take you far if you let it. When we disembarked for the final time, I didn't look for my other 2 children. They had their own roads to walk, and sometimes roads only meet again after a long geography of distance. I stepped onto the pier and felt something strange in my bones. A thrill I'd thought belonged only to younger versions of myself. The thrill of having authored a chapter all by myself. Back home the air smelled like grass and memory. My house was how I had left it. Tidy, quiet, faithful. I stood in the doorway and listened to it the way you listen to an old friend's breathing. On the kitchen table in a bowl, Margaret's favorite apples waited like small red planets. I cut one and ate it over the sink, because some rituals are sacred and some are just delicious. I didn't expect visitors, but the doorbell rang that afternoon. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Patel, carrying a stack of Tupperware, and the kind of smile that has a welcome baked into it. "I saw your son's posts," she said gently, not specifying which ones. "And then I saw the others from the ship. The internet is no place for grief. Come for tea tomorrow. Bring a story." I told her I had a few, and we laughed, and she left a curry fragrant enough to make the house remember another country. I slept the kind of sleep you sleep when the waiting is over. The next day, I went to the bank and moved some money. Not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted my choices to be as deliberate on paper as they were in my heart. I updated a few documents. I wrote 3 letters on good stationery, the kind that makes your words feel like they stand up straight. One for each child. In David's I wrote, "You are a leader. Learn to lead with humility, not hunger. When you believe love is a ladder, you will step on everyone to climb. When you learn love is a table, you will finally make room." In Linda's I wrote, "Beauty is not a mirror. It is a window. You have spent too long watching yourself. Turn your camera outward. You will be astonished what it captures." In Mark's I wrote, "You found your voice, keep it. Speak it softly when you can, firmly when you must, and never let it be rented out to anyone else's fear." I sealed the letters and placed them in a drawer. They were not threats or declarations. They were offerings. Whether anyone picked them up one day would be their choice, not my assignment. A week passed. The text slowed, then stopped. The algorithms moved on to other dramas. In the quiet, I planted basil in the backyard and fixed a loose hinge on the gate. I made pancakes for dinner one night because I could. I put on Margaret's favorite record and let the clarinet trick me into believing time had a back door. And then one afternoon, while I was oiling the porch swing, a car pulled into the driveway. Linda stepped out, not dressed for a photo, just dressed for weather. For a second, she looked like she had when she was 8, and furious because a kite had decided not to obey her. "Do you have 10 minutes?" she asked, her voice thinner than I remembered. I nodded and wiped my hands on a rag. We sat on the swing. It creaked, an old song that keeps you company when the words won't come. She stared at her fingers, at the chipped polish, at a tiny cut she tried to hide with her thumb. "I hate losing," she said. "Always have." "I know," I said. "But sometimes what you're trying to win isn't worth the game." She swallowed. "I made you into content," she said, the words breaking as they exited. "I made you into a joke because jokes get likes and likes feel like love." She blinked hard. "When you walked onto that ship, I saw you. Not the version of you I post. You. And I felt small in a way I didn't know how to survive, so I ran." The porch held its breath with me. "Do you think you can see me now?" I asked. She nodded slowly, a tear making a bright track on her cheek. "I'm trying." "Trying," I said, "is a door. Keep it open." She didn't apologize in a neat way. Life rarely hands you tidy bows. But she asked if I would have dinner with her on Wednesday, and if I would teach her how to make the lemon chicken Margaret used to make. The one with the browned edges and the sauce that made bread perform miracles. I said yes because saying yes to dinner is one way you say yes to a future that might be better than the past. As for David, he stayed angry. He may stay angry for a long time. Some people build such tall furnaces inside themselves that even truth can't find air there. I do not hate him. I do not chase him. If he shows up one day, I will hand him a chair. Whether he sits is up to him. The story you've listened to is not a manual for revenge. I did not set out to ruin anyone. I set out to rescue myself. I wanted my children to see that the man they dismissed could still chart a course, could still throw a party, could still choose joy on purpose. I wanted to remind myself that dignity is not a trophy you are given. It is a posture you practice until it becomes the only way you know how to stand. Sometimes the best revenge is not fire or fury. Sometimes it is simply living well where others decided you couldn't. Sometimes it is greeting a captain by name and watching your own children realize they boarded the wrong ship. If you are listening to this and someone has told you that you are too old for wonder, too fragile for adventure, too late for any of it, I want to leave you with this. The ocean does not ask your age before it dazzles you. The horizon does not check your birth year before it offers you a new line to chase. You are allowed to surprise the people who misread your silence. You are allowed to surprise yourself. My name is Henry Walters. My children sailed away without me. I threw a better party on the same ship. I made new friends and kept my dignity, and learned that sometimes the people you love need to see you standing on the dock in a white suit to remember you were always capable of boarding. And if they don't remember, if they choose to forget, if they insist on mocking or minimizing or marching on without you, the sea is still there, shining. The sky is still writing invitations with light. There is always another sailing. There is always another sunrise. And there is always a seat with your name on it. even if you are the one who has to set the table and pour the champagne and lift the first toast to your own brave heart.